When Rebecca Carter looked me in the eye in our living room and said, "You inherited 15 million, give me 7.5, she was so confident. She had already calculated it. Exactly half. She'd even talked to a lawyer. She thought she had me cornered. What she didn't realize was that I'd known about her affair with Kyle for 4 months. What she didn't expect was that I'd been meeting with my own lawyer every Tuesday. And what she definitely didn't suspect was that she'd signed a post-nuptial agreement 2 years ago that would cost her everything, including custody of our 2 kids. Comment where you're watching from and hit that like button if you believe in karma. Let me take you back to where this all started. My name is Daniel Carter, and for the past 8 years I'd been married to Rebecca. On paper, we looked like the perfect middle-class couple. I was a high school history teacher at Lincoln High, where I'd been teaching for 11 years. She was a marketing consultant who worked from home 3 days a week and met with clients the other 2. We had 2 kids, Lucas, who was 12, and Emma, who was 9. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood in the suburbs, the kind of place where people mowed their lawns on Saturday mornings and waved to each other from driveways. Nothing fancy, nothing that would make anyone think we had money. And we didn't. Not really. I made $58,000 a year teaching. Rebecca pulled in around $72,000 with her consulting work. Combined, we were bringing in $130,000, which sounds like a lot until you factor in mortgage payments, car loans, kids' activities, groceries, and the general cost of existing in a major metropolitan area. We were comfortable, but we weren't wealthy. We drove sensible cars, a 7-year-old Honda Accord for me and a 5-year-old Toyota RAV4 for Rebecca. We took 1 vacation a year, usually to a beach town within driving distance. We shopped at Target. We meal prepped on Sundays. We bought generic brand cereal. We were, by every measure, ordinary. But somewhere along the way, that stopped being enough for Rebecca. I'm not sure when it started. Maybe it was gradual. Maybe it was always there, simmering under the surface, and I just didn't see it because I was too busy grading papers and coaching the debate team and trying to be a good dad. But over the past 2 years, I'd noticed changes. Small things at first. She started making comments about our house, how the kitchen was outdated, how the bathrooms needed renovating, how her friend Danielle had just put in marble countertops and a farmhouse sink and it looked like something out of a magazine. I'd nod and say, maybe someday. We'd been talking about saving up for a kitchen remodel for 3 years. We had about $4,000 set aside. At the rate we were going, we'd have enough in another 2 years, maybe 3. But Rebecca didn't want to wait 2 years. She wanted it now. Then came the comments about my job. She never said it directly, at least not at first, but the implications were clear. Why did you choose teaching? You could have been a lawyer. You had the LSAT scores. We could have had a different life. Your college roommate is a partner at a firm in Manhattan now. He makes $400,000 a year. What do you make again? I'd chosen teaching because I loved it. I loved working with kids. I loved the moment when a student who'd been struggling with the causes of World War I finally understood the interconnectedness of alliances and nationalism and imperialism. I loved being the teacher who actually gave a damn, who stayed late to help kids with college essays, who showed up to their soccer games and theater performances. I loved making a difference, but to Rebecca that was starting to feel like a failure, a choice that had limited her life. Still, I tried. I tried to make her happy. I picked up summer school for extra money, which brought in an additional $4,000 every June and July. I took on tutoring gigs on the side, charging $40 an hour to help kids prepare for AP exams. I surprised her with flowers every other Friday. I planned date nights, usually just dinner at a mid-range Italian place followed by a walk around the park, but I tried. I asked her what she needed. I asked her if she was happy. She'd always say the same thing, "I'm fine, just tired." But she wasn't fine. She was distant, distracted, always on her phone. She'd sit across from me at dinner, fork in one hand, phone in the other, scrolling through something I couldn't see. When I'd ask what she was looking at, she'd say, "Work stuff, always work stuff." I noticed other things too. She started going to the gym more, 4 times a week, then 5. She'd leave at 9:30 in the morning and come back at 11:30, freshly showered, her hair still damp. She started buying new workout clothes, expensive ones, Lululemon, Alo Yoga, brands that cost $80 for a pair of leggings. When I asked about it, she said she deserved to feel good about herself, and she was right. She did, but it was the way she said it, like she was justifying something. She started talking about this personal trainer she'd hired. His name was Kyle. She brought him up constantly. "Kyle says I need to focus on compound movements. Kyle thinks I should increase my protein intake. Kyle recommended this new supplement. I didn't think much of it at first. Personal trainers talk to their clients, that's their job. But then she started mentioning him in other contexts. Kyle's so funny. Kyle told me this hilarious story about a client who tried to deadlift 300 pounds on her first day. Kyle's training for a triathlon. It was always Kyle this, Kyle that. And every time she said his name, there was this lightness in her voice that I hadn't heard in months. Our sex life, which had never been particularly adventurous but had always been consistent, dropped off a cliff. We went from twice a week to once every 2 weeks, to maybe once a month if I initiated, and she wasn't too tired, and she was always too tired. I started to wonder if something was wrong, if she was depressed, if she was going through something I didn't understand. I suggested therapy. She said she didn't need it. I suggested couples counseling. She said, we were fine. Everything's fine, Daniel, stop worrying so much, but I couldn't stop worrying. Because deep down I knew something was wrong, I just didn't know what. And then, 4 months ago, I found out. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late September. I'd left school early because I had a dentist appointment at 2:30. The appointment was supposed to take an hour, but the dentist finished in 30 minutes. No cavities. Quick cleaning. I was out the door by 3. I decided to head home instead of going back to work. My planning period was at 3:30 anyway, and by the time I drove back to school, it'd be almost over. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw a car I didn't recognize. A black BMW 4 Series. Sleek. Expensive. The kind of car that costs $60,000 and screams I'm doing well for myself. It was parked in the spot where Rebecca usually parked, which meant she'd moved her car to the street. That was odd. She hated parking on the street. I walked into the house quietly. I wasn't trying to catch anyone. I genuinely just thought maybe it was one of Rebecca's clients. She'd been landing bigger accounts recently, and some of them had money. But as I walked through the entryway toward the kitchen, I heard her voice. She was laughing. Not the polite laugh she used with clients. Not the fake laugh she used at parent-teacher conferences when another mom made a joke that wasn't funny. The real laugh. The one I hadn't heard in months. The one that used to make me smile because it meant she was genuinely happy. I stopped at the doorway to the kitchen. She was standing by the counter with a man I'd never seen before. Tall, maybe 6'2", muscular. The kind of muscular that comes from spending 2 hours a day at the gym. He was probably in his late 20s, maybe early 30s. He was wearing a tight black athletic shirt that showed off his arms and shoulders, dark joggers and expensive white sneakers that looked like they'd never touched dirt. His hair was perfectly styled. He had a designer watch on his wrist, and he had his hand on Rebecca's lower back. Not in a casual way, in an intimate way, in a way that said, this isn't the first time I've touched you. And she wasn't pulling away. That's when I knew this was going to be one of those nights. I cleared my throat. They both turned around, startled. Rebecca's face went pale for half a second before she recovered. The guy, whoever he was, didn't even look embarrassed. He just smiled, confident, like he belonged there. Daniel, Rebecca said quickly. Her voice was too bright, too cheerful. You're home early. Yeah, I said. Dentist finished early. She gestured toward the guy. This is Kyle. He's my personal trainer. We were just going over my workout plan for next month. Kyle extended his hand. Good to meet you, man. I shook it. His grip was firm, performative, the kind of handshake that's designed to communicate dominance. I could tell he was the type who measured himself by how strong his handshake was, how loud his car was, how many women looked at him when he walked into a room. I smiled politely and said, Thanks for helping Rebecca stay in shape. Kyle grinned. She's one of my most dedicated clients. Honestly, I wish all my clients were as committed as she is. Rebecca smiled. She actually smiled, like she was proud of the compliment, like it meant something to her. Well, I said, don't let me interrupt. I'm just going to grab some water and head upstairs. We're almost done anyway, Kyle said. He looked at Rebecca. Same time Thursday? Yeah, she said. Same time. I watched from the kitchen window as she walked him to the door. They stood outside on the front porch for another 3 minutes. I timed it. 3 minutes and 17 seconds. She touched his arm twice. He leaned in close, said something that made her laugh again, and then he got into his BMW and drove away. When she came back inside, she acted like nothing had happened. She asked me about my dentist appointment. She started prepping dinner, chopping vegetables for a stir-fry. She hummed while she cooked. She was calm, collected, too calm. That was the moment I realized this wasn't new. This had been going on for a while. Over the next 2 weeks, I did what any reasonable person would do when they suspect their spouse is cheating. I paid attention. I started noticing patterns. Rebecca went to the gym every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday, always at 10 in the morning, always for exactly 90 minutes. She'd come home with her hair wet from the shower, but her workout clothes barely looked worn. No sweat stains, no smell, just damp hair and a suspiciously good mood. She was on her phone constantly, always angled away from me, always putting it face down when I walked into the room. She'd started password protecting it 6 months ago. When I asked why, she said it was because of work. She had confidential client information on there and didn't want to risk anyone seeing it. At the time, it made sense. Now it felt like a lie. She started going out more. Girls' nights, client dinners, networking events. She'd come home at 11, midnight, sometimes 1 in the morning. She'd smell like wine and perfume, sometimes cologne, never mine. And she stopped asking about my day. We'd sit at dinner, Lucas talking about his math test, Emma showing me a drawing she'd made in art class, and Rebecca would just nod along, barely listening. When I'd ask her about her day, she'd give one-word answers. Fine, busy, tiring. I wanted to confront her. Part of me wanted to just ask her directly, "Are you cheating on me? Are you sleeping with Kyle?" But something stopped me. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the hope that I was wrong, that I was being paranoid, that there was some reasonable explanation for all of this. Or maybe I just wasn't ready to blow up my entire life based on suspicion. So instead, I did something I'd never done before, something I never thought I'd have to do. I hired a private investigator. His name was Marcus Webb. He was a former cop who'd retired after 23 years on the force and started a small investigation firm out of an office above a dry cleaner on the east side of town. He was in his 50s, balding, with a gut that suggested he enjoyed beer and barbecue, but he had kind eyes and a reputation for being thorough and discreet. I found him through a Google search that I did on my phone during my lunch break, sitting in my car in the school parking lot. I met him on a Thursday afternoon during my planning period. His office was small, a desk, 2 chairs, a filing cabinet, and a window that overlooked the parking lot. It smelled like coffee and old paper. "You want to know if your wife's cheating," he said. Not a question, a statement. He'd probably heard this exact story 100 times. "Yeah. How sure are you?" 90%. He nodded slowly, like he was calculating something in his head. "I'll need 2 weeks. Maybe less. If she's sloppy, I'll have proof in 3 days. If she's careful, it'll take longer. Most people think they're careful. Most people are sloppy. She's careful," I said. "They always are," he said, "until they're not." He quoted me a price, $2,000 up front plus expenses. If he found proof, I'd owe him another $1,000. If he didn't, I'd only be out the $2,000. I didn't have $2,000 sitting around, but I had a credit card with a $5,000 limit. I told him I'd do it. "I'll need her schedule," he said. "Where she goes, when, what kind of car she drives, any places she frequents. The more you can give me, the faster I can work." I gave him everything: her gym schedule, the name of the gym, Kyle's Instagram handle, which I'd found by searching through Rebecca's followers, the coffee shop she liked, the restaurants she'd mentioned, her car make and model, her license plate number. Marcus wrote it all down in a small notebook. Then he looked at me and said, "This is going to hurt. No matter what I find, it's going to hurt. You ready for that?" I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. He was right. It took him 11 days. On the 11th day, Marcus called me during my planning period. "I've got what you need," he said. "Can you meet me at my office?" I left school at 3 and drove straight there. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I kept thinking maybe he didn't find anything. Maybe Rebecca was just friends with Kyle. Maybe I was wrong, but I wasn't wrong. Marcus handed me a manila folder. It was thicker than I expected. I opened it slowly, like I was defusing a bomb. There were 43 photographs inside, all printed on standard copy paper, time-stamped, dated, locations noted at the bottom of each one. The first photo was Rebecca and Kyle at a hotel, the Riverside Inn, a mid-range place about 20 minutes from our house. They were walking into the lobby together. Her hand was on his arm. The timestamp said 10:47 a.m., October 3rd, a Thursday, the day she'd told me she had a client meeting downtown. The second photo was them in the hotel parking lot, her car and his BMW parked next to each other. Timestamp, 12:53 p.m. same day. The third photo was them at a coffee shop. They were sitting at a small table by the window. She was leaning forward, smiling. He had his hand over hers on the table. Timestamp: 11:18 a.m., October 9th, a Wednesday. The day she'd said she was working from the library because our internet was acting up. The photos went on. Rebecca and Kyle at a different hotel. Rebecca and Kyle at a park, sitting on a bench, her head on his shoulder. Rebecca and Kyle in his car, parked in a lot near the gym, kissing. Not a peck, a real kiss. The kind that lasts. I sat in Marcus's office and looked through every single one. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just felt numb, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart instead of my own. "I'm sorry," Marcus said quietly. I closed the folder. "How much do I owe you?" $3,000 total, 2 up front, 1 for results. I handed him my credit card. He ran it. I signed the receipt. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "I don't know," I said. But that was a lie. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I was going to protect myself. I was going to protect my kids. And I was going to make sure that when this whole thing blew up, I'd be the one left standing. I just didn't know how. Not yet. I drove home in a daze. Lucas and Emma were at after-school programs. Chess club for him and art class for her. Rebecca was home. I could see her car in the driveway. I sat in my car for 5 minutes staring at the folder in my passenger seat. Part of me wanted to walk in and throw the photos on the kitchen table, to ask her how long it had been going on, to ask her if she loved him, to ask her why I wasn't enough, but I didn't, because I knew what would happen. She'd cry. She'd apologize. She'd say it was a mistake. She'd beg me to forgive her, and maybe I would. Maybe I'd forgive her because it was easier than starting over, because I didn't want to put the kids through a divorce, because I still loved the version of her I'd married 8 years ago, even if that version didn't exist anymore. And then what? We'd go to couples therapy. We'd try to rebuild trust. And in 6 months or a year or 2 years, she'd do it again. Because people don't change unless they have a reason to. And Rebecca didn't have a reason yet. So I waited. I went inside. I said hello. I asked her how her day was. She said fine. I made dinner. Spaghetti with marinara sauce from a jar. Garlic bread from the freezer. A salad from a bag. We ate together, the 4 of us. Lucas told me about a chess tournament coming up. Emma showed me a painting she'd made of our house. Rebecca scrolled through her phone, and I smiled and nodded and acted like everything was fine, because I needed time. Time to figure out what to do next. Time to build a plan. 2 days later, something happened that changed everything. My uncle passed away. Uncle Thomas was my father's older brother. He was 73 years old. Never married. No kids. He'd spent most of his life working in finance, building a career that quietly made him very, very wealthy. But you'd never know it by looking at him. He drove a 15-year-old Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door. He lived in the same small 2-bedroom house in a modest neighborhood for 40 years. He wore the same 4 shirts on rotation and bought his jeans from Costco. He was the kind of man who clipped coupons and reused Ziploc bags and turned off lights when he left a room. You'd never ever guess he had money, but he did. And when he died, he left everything to me. I found out on a Wednesday morning. I was in the middle of teaching my second period class, a lecture on the Treaty of Versailles, when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. It buzzed again and again. After the 3rd buzz, I excused myself and stepped into the hallway. 3 missed calls from an unknown number. A voicemail. I listened to the voicemail. It was a woman's voice, professional and calm. "Mr. Carter, this is Patricia Green from Green and Associates. I'm the executor of your Uncle Thomas Carter's estate. I need to speak with you regarding his will. Please call me back at your earliest convenience. This is time sensitive." I called her back during my planning period. She answered on the 2nd ring. "Mr. Carter," she said, "thank you for calling back. I'm very sorry for your loss." "Thank you. I know this is a difficult time, but I need to meet with you to discuss your uncle's estate. Are you available this afternoon? I have classes until 3. How about 4:30? My office is downtown." "That works." "Good. And Mr. Carter, you may want to bring your wife. This is significant. I didn't bring Rebecca. I didn't tell her about the call. I just told her I had a dentist appointment and left school at 3:15. Ms. Patricia Green's office was on the 22nd floor of a sleek glass building in the financial district. The kind of place where everyone wears suits and carries leather briefcases and talks on Bluetooth headsets in the elevator. The reception area had floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the city skyline. The furniture was modern, expensive. Everything smelled faintly of lemon and leather. Ms. Green was in her 50s, sharply dressed in a navy suit with her hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had the kind of calm authority that comes from handling other people's fortunes for decades. She shook my hand firmly and gestured for me to sit in a leather chair across from her desk. She offered me coffee. I accepted. She poured it from a sleek stainless steel carafe into a porcelain mug and slid it across the desk. Then she opened a folder and slid a document toward me. "Your uncle's estate," she said, "is valued at approximately $15.3 million. I blinked. The room felt suddenly very warm. "I'm sorry, what?" $15.3 million. After taxes, estate fees, and probate costs, you're looking at approximately $14.8 million in liquid assets. Additionally, your uncle owned a property in Vermont, a small cabin on 12 acres, valued at approximately $800,000. That brings the total to just over $15.6 million. But after all fees, you'll receive approximately $15 million. I just stared at her. My brain couldn't process the number. $15 million. $15 million. She smiled gently. "I understand this is a lot to take in. Your uncle was very deliberate about his finances. He made smart investments early in his career and lived well below his means for his entire life. He left very specific instructions in his will that everything should go to you." "Why me?" I asked. My voice sounded strange, distant. "He didn't have children. Your father, his younger brother, passed away 6 years ago. You were, by his account, the only family member he respected. He admired that you became a teacher. He told me once that you chose meaning over money, and he wanted to make sure you were taken care of. He wanted you to have the freedom to keep doing what you love without worrying about finances." I didn't know what to say. I sat there, holding a porcelain mug of coffee that was probably worth more than my monthly car payment, staring at a number on a piece of paper that didn't feel real. Ms. Green walked me through the logistics. Probate would take approximately 4 to 6 weeks. After that, the funds would be transferred to an account in my name. The property in Vermont would also be transferred to my name. In the meantime, she advised me to consult with a financial planner. She also very carefully suggested I speak with a family law attorney. "A family law attorney?" I asked. She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Inheritance is generally considered separate property in most states, Mr. Carter, meaning it belongs solely to you, not to your marital estate. However, if you commingle those funds, if you deposit them into a joint account, use them to pay off shared debts, or purchase assets in both your and your spouse's names, they can become marital property. Given the size of this inheritance, I'd strongly recommend consulting with an attorney before making any financial decisions." I understood what she wasn't saying. She was telling me to protect myself. "Thank you," I said. She handed me her card along with the cards of 2 financial planners and 1 family law attorney. "These are people I trust," she said. "Call them." I left her office in a daze. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes, just staring at the steering wheel. $15 million. $15 million. It was more money than I'd ever imagined having, more money than I'd make in a lifetime of teaching. And I knew, immediately, that I couldn't tell Rebecca. Not yet. Because if I told her now while she was having an affair, while she was already halfway out the door, she'd see it as her ticket out. She'd file for divorce, claim she was entitled to half, and I'd spend the next 2 years in court fighting over money that should be mine. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to tell her. Not until I had a plan. I called Marcus. "I need a family lawyer," I said. "A good one." "What happened?" he asked. "I inherited money. A lot of money. And I need to protect it." There was a pause. Then Marcus said, "I know a guy. His name's Alan Harrison. He's expensive, but he's the best family lawyer in the state. If you want to protect your assets, he's the one you call. Set up a meeting." I met Alan Harrison the following Tuesday. His office was even nicer than Ms. Green's. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with leather-bound legal texts, a mahogany desk that probably cost more than my car, framed diplomas from Harvard Law School, a view of the river. Alan was in his early 60s with perfectly groomed silver hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and a suit that looked custom-tailored. He had the kind of calm confidence that made you feel like everything was going to be okay, even when your entire life was falling apart. I told him everything. The affair, the photos, the inheritance, the conversation with Ms. Green. He listened without interrupting. He took notes in a leather-bound notebook with a fountain pen. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, folded his hands and said, "You're in a very strong position, Mr. Carter." "How so?" "First, the inheritance is separate property. As long as you don't commingle it with marital assets, it's yours. She has no legal claim to it. Second, you have documented proof of infidelity. In this state, that matters. Courts still consider fault in divorce proceedings, particularly when it comes to asset division and custody. If you file for divorce and present this evidence, you'll keep the inheritance and you'll very likely get primary custody of your children." I felt something loosen in my chest. Relief, maybe, or hope. What do I need to do? We need to be strategic. First, I need to review your marital assets. Do you own your home jointly? Yes. Any joint bank accounts? One checking account and one savings account. We each have our own retirement accounts. Good. What about debts? Mortgage. 2 car loans. About $8,000 in credit card debt. Alan made notes. What's the total value of your marital assets, excluding the inheritance? I did the math in my head. The house is probably worth $320,000. We owe $240,000 on the mortgage, so maybe $80,000 in equity. The cars are probably worth $30,000 combined. The savings account has about $12,000. Retirement accounts, maybe $60,000 total. So around $180,000 total? And the credit card debt is joint? Yeah, he nodded. That's manageable. Here's what we're going to do. Over the next 4 weeks, you're going to quietly gather documentation, pay stubs, tax returns, bank statements, mortgage documents, loan paperwork, anything financial. Bring me copies of everything. We're going to build a complete picture of your marital estate. Okay. Second, you're not going to tell your wife about the inheritance. Not yet. Not until we file. What if she finds out? How would she find out? I don't know. Mail from the estate attorney? Tell Ms. Green to send everything to my office. We'll handle it here. Your wife won't know anything unless you tell her. That made sense. What about the affair? Do you have copies of the photos? Digital and printed. Good. Keep them somewhere safe, somewhere she won't find them. We'll present them when we file. What about the postnup? I asked. Alan's eyebrows lifted. You have a postnuptial agreement? Yeah. We signed one 2 years ago. He leaned forward, suddenly very interested. Walk me through that. Why did you sign a postnup? 2 years ago, Rebecca had been worried about liability. She'd just started her consulting business as an LLC, and one of her clients had mentioned that consultants sometimes get sued if a marketing campaign goes wrong or if there's a breach of confidentiality. Rebecca was anxious about it. She didn't want our personal assets to be at risk if her business got sued, so she'd suggested we sign a postnuptial agreement. The idea was that if her business ran into legal trouble, our assets would be protected because they'd be legally separate. It made sense at the time. We went to a lawyer, a guy named Martin Chen, who did estate planning and family law. He drew up the agreement. It stated that in the event of a divorce, all assets acquired individually during the marriage would remain the property of the individual who acquired them. Shared assets, like the house and joint accounts, would be split 50-50. Rebecca signed it without reading it carefully. I remember that clearly. We were in Chen's office, and he explained the basic terms, and Rebecca just nodded along and signed on the dotted line. She was so confident we'd never divorce that she didn't even ask questions. What she didn't notice or didn't care about was the infidelity clause. It was buried in the middle of the document. Section 7, subsection C. It stated that if either party committed adultery, proven by clear and convincing evidence, that party would forfeit any claim to assets acquired by the other party during the marriage or during separation proceedings. I'd read it carefully at the time. I'm a teacher. I read everything carefully, but I never thought I'd need it. I thought we were solid. I thought we'd make it. Alan pulled up a digital copy of the postnup on his computer. I'd emailed it to him before the meeting. He read through it carefully, his eyes scanning the text. Then he smiled. It was a small smile, but it was there. This, he said, tapping the screen, is a gift. What do you mean? This infidelity clause is ironclad. If you can prove your wife committed adultery, which you can with the photos, she forfeits any claim to your inheritance. Not only that, but if we play this right, she'll also forfeit her claim to half of the marital assets. You could walk away with the house, the savings, everything. Is that fair? I asked. It was a stupid question maybe, but it felt important. Alan looked at me seriously. Fair is subjective, Mr. Carter. Legally, you'd be entitled to it. Morally, that's for you to decide. But I'll tell you this. She made a choice. She chose to have an affair. She chose to violate your trust and your marriage. And she signed an agreement that laid out the consequences. She doesn't get to ignore that now. I sat with that for a moment. What do? You prepare. Quietly. You don't tell her about the inheritance. You don't tell her you know about the affair. You gather documentation. You wait for the probate to clear. And when you're ready, when we have everything we need, we file for divorce. And we present everything at once. The affair, the post-nup, the inheritance. She won't have time to prepare a defense. And by the time she realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. It felt cold, calculated, like something a villain would do in a movie, but it also felt necessary, because if I confronted her now, without a plan, I'd lose. She'd cry and apologize and manipulate me into forgiving her, and then she'd do it again. Or she'd file first, claim ignorance, and I'd spend years in court. This way, I controlled the narrative. I controlled the outcome. How long will it take? I asked. Probate is 4 to 6 weeks. Gathering documentation, another 2 weeks. Prepping the filing, 1 week. So, roughly 6 to 8 weeks total. Can you hold out that long? I thought about it. 6 to 8 weeks of pretending everything was fine. 6 to 8 weeks of smiling at Rebecca across the dinner table while she texted Kyle. 6 to 8 weeks of living a lie. Yeah, I said. I can do that. Good. One more thing. Do you have somewhere you can store the inheritance once it clears? A separate account that's not connected to your wife in any way. Ms. Green mentioned setting up a new account. Do that, and don't tell your wife. If she asks about mail or bank statements, tell her it's related to your uncle's estate and that it's complicated and you're handling it. Keep it vague. The less she knows, the better. Over the next 6 weeks, I lived a double life. During the day, I was the same Daniel I'd always been. I taught my classes, I graded papers, I made dinner. I helped Lucas with his algebra homework. I braided Emma's hair in the mornings before school. I smiled at Rebecca when she came home from the gym. I asked her about her day. I acted like everything was fine. But every Tuesday and Thursday during my planning period, I met with Alan. We built the case. I brought him every piece of financial documentation I could find. Bank statements going back 3 years, tax returns, mortgage documents, pay stubs, credit card statements, retirement account summaries, everything. Alan went through it all meticulously, building a complete picture of our marital estate. He created spreadsheets. He calculated equity. He projected outcomes. He was thorough in a way that made me feel like I was in good hands. Meanwhile, Rebecca kept up her routine. Gym 4 times a week, late nights out, always on her phone. She'd stopped even pretending to be interested in my life. When I'd tell her about something that happened at school, she'd nod without looking up from her screen. When Lucas brought home a report card with straight A's, she barely glanced at it. When Emma asked her to come to her art show at school, Rebecca said she had a client meeting. She didn't. I checked. The client meeting wasn't real. She was at a hotel with Kyle. I knew because Marcus was still tracking her. I'd kept him on retainer just in case I needed more evidence. He sent me updates every few days. More photos. More timestamps. More proof. It was almost too much. Part of me wanted to stop looking. Part of me didn't want to know every detail of her betrayal. But I couldn't stop. Because every photo, every piece of evidence made the case stronger. And I needed it to be airtight. 5 weeks after my uncle's death, the inheritance cleared. I got an email from Ms. Green at 9:30 on a Thursday morning. I was sitting at my desk during my planning period, grading essays on the Russian Revolution, when my phone buzzed. The email was short. Mr. Carter, probate has been finalized. $14.8 million has been transferred to the account we established. Please confirm receipt. Regards, Patricia Green. I opened my banking app. There it was. An account I'd opened 3 weeks prior at a bank Rebecca didn't use. An account with only my name on it, and a balance of $14,800,000. I stared at the number for a long time. It still didn't feel real. It felt like a typo, like someone had accidentally added too many zeros. But it was real. I was a millionaire. I was set for life. My kids' college funds were covered. My retirement was covered. I could quit teaching if I wanted to. I could travel. I could do anything. But I didn't want to quit teaching. I loved teaching. I just wanted to be free from the weight of financial stress. And now I was. That night, Rebecca came home late. 11:15. She smelled like wine and cologne. She said she'd been at a networking event. I didn't ask questions. I just nodded and said goodnight. The next morning, I called Alan. It cleared, I said. Good. We're ready to file. Are you ready? I thought about it. Was I ready? Ready to blow up my marriage? Ready to tell my kids their mom and I were getting divorced? Ready to face Rebecca and tell her I knew everything? Yeah, I said. I'm ready. I'll have the papers drawn up by Monday. We'll file Tuesday morning. I'll have her served at your house Tuesday afternoon. Make sure you're not home when it happens. Take the kids somewhere, a park, anywhere. I don't want them there when she gets served. Okay. And Daniel? Once we file, things are going to move fast. She's going to be angry. She's going to try to contact you. Don't engage. Let me handle everything. Understood? Understood. Monday came and went. I taught my classes. I smiled. I joked with my students. I went home and made dinner. Tacos. Rebecca didn't eat with us. She said she wasn't hungry. She went to her room and closed the door. Tuesday morning, Alan filed the papers. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Daniel Carter versus Rebecca Carter. I was at school when it happened, teaching a lesson on the Cold War. My phone buzzed with a text from Alan at 10:30. Filed. She'll be served at 3. At 2:45, I picked up Lucas and Emma from school. I told them we were going to the park. Emma asked why. I said because it was a nice day, and I wanted to spend time with them. Lucas looked at me like he knew something was up, but he didn't say anything. We went to the park. We played on the swings. I pushed Emma higher and higher while she shrieked with laughter. Lucas sat on the bench next to me and asked if everything was okay. Yeah, buddy, I said. Everything's fine. He didn't believe me. I could tell, but he didn't push. At 4:15, my phone rang. It was Rebecca. I didn't answer. She called again, and again, 5 times in 10 minutes. Then I got a text. What the hell is this? Call me now. I didn't call. I texted Alan. She got served. He replied immediately. Good. Don't respond to her. I'll handle it. I took Lucas and Emma to get ice cream. We sat outside the shop, eating cones in the late afternoon sun. Emma got chocolate chip. Lucas got mint. I got vanilla. We talked about school and soccer and Emma's upcoming piano recital. Normal things. Things that felt safe. When we got home at 6, Rebecca's car was in the driveway. I could see her through the window, pacing in the living room, phone pressed to her ear. I took the kids inside through the garage. Go to your rooms and start your homework, I said. I need to talk to Mom. Lucas hesitated. Dad, is everything okay? Everything's fine, I promise. Just give me a few minutes. They went upstairs. I walked into the living room. Rebecca was standing by the window, her phone in her hand, her face red and blotchy from crying. When she saw me, she held up the divorce papers. What is this? She demanded. It's a divorce petition. I can see that. Why? Why would you do this? I almost laughed. The audacity. Are you serious right now? Yes, I'm serious. You just filed for divorce without even talking to me. You've been cheating on me with Kyle for almost a year, Rebecca. Don't act surprised. Her face went pale. How do you? I've known for 4 months. I have photos, timestamps, hotels, parking lots, all of it. She sank onto the couch, the papers falling from her hand. Daniel, I can explain. I don't want to hear it. Please, just let me out. No. My voice was calm, cold. You made your choice. You chose Kyle. You chose to lie to me for months. You chose to destroy this marriage, and now you get to live with the consequences. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. So that's it? You're just done? What about the kids? The kids will be fine. They'll live with me. You'll get visitation. You can't take my kids from me. I'm not taking them. You gave them up the moment you started sleeping with someone else. She stood up, angry now. You don't get to decide that. The court will decide. And when they see the evidence, when they see that you've been absent from their lives for the past year, when they see that you've missed dinners and games and recitals and parent-teacher conferences, they're going to give me custody. Because you stopped being a parent a long time ago. She was shaking. This is about the money, isn't it? Your uncle's money. You're trying to keep it all for yourself. The money has nothing to do with you. I'm your wife. We're supposed to share everything. Not anymore. She grabbed the papers off the couch and flipped through them frantically. Where does it say how much the inheritance is? Where does it how? She stopped. Her eyes locked on something. What is this, postnuptial agreement, section 7C? I watched her read it. Watched her face change as she realized what it meant. You can't do this, she whispered. I already did. I signed this 2 years ago. I didn't even read it carefully. That's not my problem. She looked at me with something like hatred. You planned this. You've been planning this for months. The whole time you knew. And you just let me think everything was fine, and you were planning this. Yes. You're a bastard. Maybe, but I'm not a cheater. She picked up her phone. I'm calling a lawyer. Go ahead. She did. She called someone right there in the living room on speaker. A man answered. Brennan Law, this is Richard. Richard, this is Rebecca Carter. I need to hire you immediately. My husband just filed for divorce and he's trying to screw me over. There was a pause. Mrs. Carter, I'd be happy to help. Can you come to my office tomorrow morning? 9 a.m.? Yes, I'll be there. She hung up and glared at me. This isn't over. Yeah, it is. I turned and walked upstairs. Lucas and Emma were in Lucas's room, sitting on his bed. They looked scared. Is everything okay? Emma asked in a small voice. I sat down between them and put my arms around both of them. Your mom and I are getting divorced, I said gently. But I want you to know that it has nothing to do with you. We both love you very much. That's never going to change. Are we going to have to move? Lucas asked. No, you're going to stay here with me. Mom will still see you. We'll figure out a schedule. Emma started crying. I held her close and let her cry into my shirt. Is it because of Kyle? Lucas asked. I looked at him, surprised. You know about Kyle? I'm 12, Dad. I'm not stupid. I've seen the way Mom acts when she talks about him, and she's been gone a lot. I didn't know what to say, so I just told him the truth. Yeah, buddy. It's because of Kyle. He nodded slowly. I'm glad you're not just letting her get away with it. That night after the kids were asleep, I sat in the living room alone. The house was quiet. Rebecca had gone to stay with a friend, and for the first time in months I felt like I could breathe. The next day Rebecca met with her lawyer, Richard Brennan. He was expensive, aggressive, the kind of lawyer who bills $400 an hour and sends threatening letters. By the end of the week, Alan had received a 10-page demand letter. It demanded an immediate settlement, 50% of the inheritance, full custody of the children, spousal support of $3,000 per month. Alan sent back a 2-page response. It included a copy of the postnuptial agreement with Section 7C highlighted in yellow. It included a summary of the evidence of adultery. It included a polite but firm statement that there would be no settlement. Rebecca's lawyer went quiet for a week. Then things started to get messy. Rebecca began telling people her version of the story. She called her friends. She called her mother. She posted cryptic messages on social media about betrayal and heartbreak. She painted herself as the victim, the wife who'd been blindsided by a cold, calculating husband who was hiding millions of dollars and trying to steal her children. Some people believed her. Her mother called me and screamed at me for 20 minutes. A few of her friends sent me angry texts, but not as many as Rebecca probably expected, because other people were starting to talk too. 2 weeks after I filed for divorce, Rebecca's best friend Sophie reached out to me. We'd always been friendly. She and her husband came to our house for dinner parties. Our kids played together. I liked Sophie. She was kind and genuine and one of the few people in Rebecca's circle who'd never made me feel like I wasn't good enough. She asked if we could meet for coffee. I said yes. We met at a quiet café au lait near the school on a Saturday morning. Sophie looked uncomfortable when I walked in. Guilty even. We ordered coffee and sat at a table in the corner. I need to tell you something, she said, and I don't know how to say it, so I'm just going to say it. Okay. Rebecca's been talking about you for years, behind your back, to all of us, her friends. She's been calling you a failure, saying you're the reason she's stuck, saying she deserves better than a high school teacher, saying she married the wrong person. I wasn't surprised, but hearing it out loud still hurt. How long? At least 3 years, maybe longer. I always felt uncomfortable when she said those things, but I didn't know what to do. I thought it was just venting. Married people complain about their spouses, it's normal. But after she told everyone that you blindsided her with divorce papers and that you're hiding money from her, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Why not? Because she's lying, Daniel. About everything. And you don't deserve that. Sophie pulled out her phone. She opened a group chat and handed it to me. This is our friends group chat. It's me, Rebecca, and 5 other women. We've been in this chat for 4 years. Read through it. You'll see. I scrolled through the messages. They went back months, years even. Messages where Rebecca complained about me. Messages where she called me boring, unambitious, a disappointment. One message from 8 months ago. Daniel's working late again. Kyle's coming over DY. Another from 6 months ago. I don't know why I married someone with zero ambition. Another from 4 months ago. If he finds out, I'll just take half of everything and start over. Win-win. I read them all. Every single one. My hands were shaking. I'm sorry, Sophie said quietly. I should have told you sooner. I should have said something, but I didn't want to get involved. And now I feel terrible. It's not your fault. It is, though. I knew, we all knew, and we didn't say anything. Why are you telling me now? Because you deserve to know the truth. And because Rebecca's telling everyone that you're the bad guy. And that's not fair. You're not the bad guy, Daniel. She is. I forwarded the screenshots to Alan. He called me an hour later. This is gold, he said. Premeditation. Proof that she was planning to take half of your assets even before she knew about the inheritance. This strengthens our case significantly. Over the next week, 2 more of Rebecca's friends came forward. They sent me similar messages. Screenshots of Rebecca bragging about Kyle. Screenshots of her talking about divorce strategy. Screenshots where she called me pathetic. It was humiliating, but it was also clarifying, because it confirmed what I'd suspected for a long time. Rebecca didn't just stop loving me. She'd stopped respecting me. Maybe she never had. And then we found the secret bank account. Alan's team did a deep dive into our finances. They requested records from every bank we'd ever used. And they found something Rebecca had never told me about. 3 years ago, she'd opened a separate savings account at a bank across town. It was in her name only. She'd been depositing money into it every month. Small amounts. 200 here, 500 there, sometimes 1,000. Over 3 years, she'd saved $47,000. She'd never mentioned it. Not once. It wasn't on any of the financial disclosures we'd done when we bought the house or refinanced the mortgage. She'd hidden it. Alan brought it up in mediation. We were sitting in a conference room at his office. Me, Alan, Rebecca, and her lawyer, Richard Brennan. The room was cold and sterile. White walls, a long table, uncomfortable chairs. Alan slid a bank statement across the table. Your client has $47,000 in a separate account at First National Bank. This account was never disclosed. She's been hiding assets while accusing my client of doing the same. Richard picked up the statement. His face changed. He looked at Rebecca. Is this true? Rebecca's face went red. I was saving for emergencies. That's still a marital asset, Alan said calmly, and it should have been disclosed. The fact that it wasn't raises serious questions about your client's credibility. Richard asked for a recess. He and Rebecca stepped out of the room. I could hear them arguing in the hallway. When they came back 20 minutes later, Richard's tone had completely changed. He was no longer aggressive. He was defensive. We're prepared to settle, he said. The settlement was straightforward. Rebecca got half of our marital assets. The house, which had $80,000 in equity, would be sold. We'd split the proceeds. She'd get half of our joint savings account, which was $12,000. She'd get her car. I'd get mine. We'd split the retirement accounts 50-50. She'd get nothing from the inheritance. She'd get visitation with the kids every other weekend and 1 weeknight per week. She'd get no spousal support. Rebecca signed the papers 3 weeks later. Her hand was shaking as she wrote her name. But the story didn't end there. 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized, Kyle broke up with her. I found out through Sophie, who texted me one afternoon. Thought you should know. Kyle dumped Rebecca. He thought she was getting millions in the divorce. When he found out she got nothing, he lost interest. Broke up with her over text. I read the message 3 times. The irony was almost poetic. She'd destroyed our marriage for a man who only wanted her for money she didn't have. I didn't feel happy about it. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt tired. Rebecca tried to fight the custody arrangement. A month after the divorce, she filed a motion claiming I was alienating the kids from her, that I was poisoning them against her, that I was preventing her from having a relationship with them. Alan was ready. We had evidence. School records showing that I'd attended every single parent-teacher conference for the past 3 years. Rebecca had attended too. We had attendance records from Lucas's soccer games. I'd been to 48 out of 48 games over 2 seasons. Rebecca had been to 3. We had testimony from Emma's piano teacher, who said I was the one who drove Emma to lessons every week, stayed to watch, and helped her practice at home. Rebecca had never attended a single lesson. We had statements from teachers, coaches, and other parents. All of them said the same thing. Daniel is involved. Daniel cares. Daniel shows up. Rebecca doesn't. The hearing was on a Tuesday morning. We sat in a courtroom that smelled like old wood and floor polish. The judge was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense. She reviewed the evidence. She read through the statements. Then she asked if Lucas and Emma wanted to speak. They both said yes. Lucas went first. He walked to the witness stand, calm and composed. The judge asked him where he wanted to live. With my dad, he said. Can you tell me why? Lucas took a breath. My mom hasn't been home for dinner in 11 months. My dad never missed one. My mom forgot my birthday last year. My dad threw me a party and invited my whole team. My mom doesn't come to my games. My dad has never missed one. I love my mom, but I want to live with my dad. The courtroom was silent. Emma went next. She was crying before she even sat down. The judge asked her the same question. I want to stay with Daddy, she said through tears. Mommy's always gone. Daddy reads to me every night. Daddy helps me with my homework. Daddy makes me breakfast. I miss Mommy, but I want to stay with Daddy. Rebecca started to cry. Her lawyer tried to object, tried to say the kids were too young to make that decision, but the judge held up her hand. I've heard enough, she said. Primary physical custody goes to the father. Visitation for the mother will be every other weekend, supervised for the first 3 months to ensure a healthy transition. After 3 months, we'll revisit and potentially remove the supervision requirement. That's my ruling. She banged her gavel. Rebecca walked out of the courtroom without looking at me or the kids. Over the next 6 months, things slowly settled into a new normal. I bought a house. Nothing extravagant, nothing flashy. A 4-bedroom colonial in a good school district, 10 minutes from Lincoln High. It cost $1.2 million. I paid cash. Lucas got his own room, painted blue with posters of his favorite soccer players. Emma got her room, painted purple with a reading nook in the corner. I set up a study space for both of them with desks and bookshelves and good lighting. I enrolled them in therapy, a child psychologist who specialized in helping kids process divorce. They went once a week. Lucas didn't talk much at first, but after a few sessions he started opening up. Emma cried a lot in the beginning, but gradually she started smiling again. I didn't quit teaching. I loved my job, but I did go part-time. I reduced my schedule to 3 days a week, which gave me more flexibility to be present for the kids. I could pick them up from school. I could make it to every game, every recital, every parent-teacher conference. I could be the dad they deserved. I set up college funds for both of them, $500,000 each invested conservatively. By the time they were 18, it would be enough to cover any school they wanted, plus grad school if they chose. I put the rest of the money in a diversified portfolio managed by one of the financial planners Ms. Green had recommended. Index funds, bonds, real estate investment trusts, safe, boring. The kind of investments that would grow steadily over time without me having to think about them. I kept my job. I kept my life. I just had the security of knowing that money would never be a problem again. Rebecca moved to an apartment across town, a small 1-bedroom in a complex near the mall. She saw the kids every other weekend. The visits were supervised for the first 3 months by a court-appointed monitor. After that, the supervision was lifted. The visits were awkward at first, tense. The kids didn't know what to say to her. She didn't know what to say to them. But over time, slowly, things got a little easier. Rebecca made an effort. She showed up on time. She planned activities. She asked about school. It wasn't perfect. It probably never would be. But it was something. Her friends, the ones who'd stood by her at first, slowly started to distance themselves. Sophie told me that the group chat had dissolved, that people were uncomfortable around Rebecca now, that they'd seen the messages, seen the evidence, and realized who she really was. One by one, they stopped returning her calls. Kyle, last I heard, was dating someone new, a woman in her early 20s who worked at the gym and thought he was charming. Rebecca's mother, Susan, who'd screamed at me on the phone when the divorce was first filed, reached out 6 months later. She called and apologized. She said she was ashamed of her daughter's behavior. She said she should have known better. She asked if she could still see Lucas and Emma. I said yes. They deserved to know their grandmother. And Susan was a good woman. She'd always been kind to me. She'd just been caught in the middle of her daughter's lies. Lucas and Emma started spending 1 weekend a month with her. She took them to museums and parks and baked cookies with them. She sent me photos. She told me she was proud of the way I was handling everything. It felt good to hear that. A year after the divorce, I ran into Rebecca at the grocery store. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was shopping for dinner, pushing a cart through the produce section, when I saw her standing by the tomatoes. She looked different, thinner, tired. Her hair was shorter, cut into a bob that didn't quite suit her. She was alone. We made eye contact. For a second, I thought about turning around and walking the other way. But I didn't. Hi, she said quietly. Hi. We stood there for a moment, the awkwardness thick between us. "How are the kids?" she asked. "They're good. Lucas made the honor roll this semester. Emma's really into piano. She's working on a Chopin piece." She nodded. "That's good. I'm glad. How are you?" She hesitated. "I'm okay. I'm working. Staying busy. Got a new client last month. A tech startup. It's good money." "That's good." There was a long pause. Neither of us knew what to say. "I'm sorry," she said suddenly. Her voice was soft, almost broken. "For everything. For what I did. For how I handled things. I was selfish. I was stupid. And I hurt you. I hurt the kids. I'm sorry." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to accept her apology, to tell her it was okay, that I forgave her, that we could move forward. Part of me wanted to tell her that sorry wasn't enough, that she'd destroyed our family and broken our kids' hearts and no apology could fix that. But mostly I just felt tired. Tired of being angry. Tired of holding on to resentment. "I hope you're doing okay," I said. And I meant it. She nodded, her eyes wet. "You too." We went our separate ways. I finished my shopping, loaded the groceries into my car, and drove home. When I got there, Lucas and Emma were in the backyard playing with our new dog, a golden retriever puppy we'd adopted 2 months earlier. They'd named him Cooper. He was clumsy and energetic and exactly what we needed. I stood at the back door and watched them. Lucas throwing a tennis ball, Emma chasing after Cooper, both of them laughing. And I realized something. I'd won. Not because I'd kept the money. Not because I'd gotten custody. Not because Rebecca's affair had blown up in her face. I'd won because I was here. Because I'd shown up. Because I'd put my kids first and built a life that mattered. Rebecca wanted more. She wanted excitement and wealth and status and something bigger than what we had. She wanted a life that looked impressive from the outside, and in chasing that, she lost everything that actually mattered. I didn't need more. I had enough. I had my kids. I had my job. I had my health. I had security. I had peace. And that was more than enough. I learned something through all of this. I learned that justice doesn't always look like revenge. Sometimes it just looks like protection. Sometimes it's about setting boundaries and refusing to let someone take what's yours. Sometimes it's about being the parent who shows up, even when the other one doesn't. Was I still seeking justice or was I seeking revenge? I sat with that question for a long time, weeks, months even, and I realized the answer was both. I wanted her to face consequences. I wanted her to understand that actions have weight, that betrayal has costs, that you can't destroy someone's trust and expect them to protect you. But more than that, I wanted to protect my kids. I wanted to build a life where they felt safe and loved and valued, where they knew that at least one parent would always be there. That's what I did, and I don't regret it. Not for a second. If this story reminded you that karma has perfect timing, smash that like button and hit subscribe. I'd love to hear in the comments. Would you have told her immediately or played the long game like Daniel? Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the best revenge is just being the parent who showed up. See you in the next one.